So hello, everyone. My name's Mickey Eisenberg, and I'm thrilled to have for this Resuscitation Academy podcast, Dr. Frederick Folke, who is a professor of clinical medicine and head of research for the Copenhagen Emergency Medical Service System. Some of the most innovative research has been done by the Copenhagen EMS research, and it's largely because of this man we'll be talking to. So it's my pleasure to introduce you, Frederick. Can you tell us a little bit about the Copenhagen Emergency Medical Service System?
Yes, certainly, Mickey. So the Copenhagen EMS Dispatch Center is, we only have one dispatch center in our region, and it has a catchment area of approximately 1.8 million inhabitants. So in case of a suspected cardiac arrest and you would dial the emergency number 911, in Europe that is 112, then you would reach one of our dispatchers, and they would normally send a basic life support ambulance, that is an ambulance with paramedics. But in addition to that, in suspected cardiac arrest, we would also dispatch a mobile emergency care unit, that is a physician-manned ambulance that are capable of doing advanced life support. And they are normally specialized anesthesiologists. So this is the setting, and just to get some numbers, there are approximately 100,000 emergency calls each year, and the ambulance response time for cardiac arrest is quite fast, I would say, around 6 minutes from dispatch to vehicle stop.
Wow. Well, we all know that the importance of starting CPR as quickly as possible and providing a defibrillatory shock as quickly as possible are absolute key ingredients to successful resuscitation. And I really was impressed with reading what you have done in Copenhagen. The results of your study were published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology this April, and really a very impressive, innovative program. I really applaud you and your colleagues. Can you tell us a little bit about that study?
Yes, well, the study was, as you mentioned, was about using a smartphone application to retrieve or to alarm nearby citizen responders to go to a cardiac arrest, initiate bystander CPR, and hopefully also retrieve an AD and start early defibrillation. And in my opinion, the three main interest in our study was, one, that we could see that engaging citizen first responders that are volunteer citizen responders in case of suspected cardiac arrest, we could see that increased bystander CPR, and it actually tripled the likelihood or the odds of early defibrillation, that is in round numbers from 7 to 21% when arriving before EMS. So that was the first optimistic finding. Secondly, we found that in 42% of all the cardiac arrest cases, at least one citizen responder arrived before the EMS. And again, this was very dependent on time, on the response time. So for the very fast response times, where EMS were there at the scene within 5 minutes, it was only around 20% of the citizen responders who were there before the EMS, but going all the way up to more than 70% of cases if the EMS response times were above 10 minutes. And finally, the third finding I found optimistic and interesting for future work to do was that we actually achieved to reach the sudden cardiac arrest in private residence, that is, in private homes. So in 80% of all the cases of suspected cardiac arrest, these occurred in a private home, and a citizen responder were able to enter the home and do CPR and defibrillation before EMS.
Well, I was quite blown away when I read the article. A very, very impressive, real trailblazing type of study, not only because the citizens of Copenhagen could provide CPR and defibrillation, but as you just pointed out, they were able to enter private homes. Was there any concern about going into private homes? Was there any pushback in any way from anybody during the study?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and we certainly had a lot of discussion, and there were also many concerns about whether this was possible, durable. We had, I think, a big advantage that the app-based system was actually developed by our colleagues and researchers from Sweden, in Stockholm, and they had presented back in 2015 a study in the New England Journal of Medicine where they tested this app also going to private homes, and they had very few problems. So we basically took that knowledge and experience and tried to place that in Denmark too. And there were some concerns about whether you could enter private homes, whether that would be any problems of theft or vandalism or misuse in any way, but we haven't experienced any of that. On the contrary, the feedback we get from especially the relatives of someone with a cardiac arrest is that they're really, really glad that there's someone in the home to help their loved ones in an urgent situation like cardiac arrest.
Well, I'm very, very impressed. Frederick, did you find any unanticipated problems or any unexpected problems that occurred as the study played out?
The study we published here was actually a one-year pilot study from 2017 to 2018, and we had to correct a lot of minor problems with the app and how to retrieve the AD. And I can say one thing is I think some of the success of implementing such a citizen first responder program is to have a huge density of these volunteer citizen responders, but also a huge density of public accessible AEDs. And for the AEDs, we had previously developed a nationwide AED registry, but we had to go through all the AEDs again to make sure that they were actually, that we had really detailed information times about when they were accessible, at what time, which days. So when we alerted citizen responders through the app that they would actually go to an AD that was accessible at the time of cardiac arrest and not closed or behind locked doors in a shop or in another vendor.
I think our viewers may not realize, but you actually dispatch, not dispatch, but alert two individuals, maybe more, but one is to do CPR and one is to retrieve the defibrillator and arrive at the scene. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Actually, we had also that during the pilot study, we had to adjust the numbers. So actually now we have ended up by alarming up to 20 volunteer citizen responders. And that was because we could see that around 50%, that is 10 persons, would not see their smartphone at the time of alert. So in average, only 10 would interrogate with their app or the mobile phone at the time of the alarm.
Yes.
Of these 10 people, we could see that around 50% of them said yes to accept the alarm, 50% declined at the present time.
Right.
So on average, we can send out 5 people to retrieve an AD and start CPR.
Right, that makes sense. You have to set a wide net to get a responder.
We were and we still are very keen to also look into the well-beings of all these volunteer citizen responders. That is, they are not professionals. We can see that around 25% of our population of the citizen responders, they are healthcare professionals, but 75% are not. So they're not used to see a cardiac arrest, and they're not used to drive to a cardiac arrest location like an ambulance crew are. So we're very interested in looking into the well-being of them, make sure that they do not suffer any risk of physical injury or accidents, but also on the psychological terms that they're not really distressed. We have to keep an eye on them and interview them if they report of any signs of physical or psychological distress.
Yes, that's an excellent point to keep in mind. So any plans for the future? And that's one question, but another question is, have has this program spread to other cities in Europe or other places in the world?
Yeah, if I may answer the last question first. Certainly, this system was, as I said, developed from our college in Stockholm, Sweden, and it's developed throughout most of Sweden. And since May this year in Denmark, it became nationwide in Denmark. So now we have one system covering the whole country. Very recently, I think it was last year, 2019, there was a group of Dutch researchers who did a cross-sectional study across 29 countries in Europe, looking at which first responder program they had. And they could see around 50% of all the countries had one form or the other of citizen responder program. But there was a big diversity both between countries, but also within countries in smaller regions. So, but in my opinion, I see that basic concept of activating volunteer citizens responders are spreading throughout the world, and I think this will be hopefully a game changer, especially for reaching the cardiac arrest in private homes.
Wow, very, very, very impressive. Is there any thought of commercializing, to use a term that, say, a city in Texas could somehow utilize such a software, such a activation in their own community? Any thoughts about how to globalize such a program?
That's also a good question. I know that some of the biggest systems now worldwide is in North America, and especially it's the Pulse Point. And I know in Europe, in UK, and I mean, many countries now is the Good Sam app, which works more or less the same way. And the system we used is quite smaller. It's called the Heart Runner system. But basically, I think that you sure need to think about this almost has to be freeware in the best worlds, at least. It has to be easily integrated at the emergency dispatch centers, and it has to be free of charge for the citizen responders. So the volunteer responders, it has to be very easy for them to sign up and without any cost and free of charge. And then, of course, we could always discuss that. Of course, technology, software, it costs money, and hopefully you can have someone to pay. We've been very lucky in Denmark that it was a private foundation, Trygfonden, which paid for the development and the integration in our dispatch centers. And I think that's part of why it became a nationwide success, and it was possible for us to implement it and test it directly without any cost from us.
Well, for probably the fourth time I've said it, I'm very, very, very impressed with what you accomplished. I think it's really a landmark article in the world of emergency medical services, and I applaud you and your colleagues for being able to do it and demonstrate such an impressive outcome. So, Freddie, any final words you'd like to say to the group in the Resuscitation Academy Network?
Yes, at least that was related to one of your questions. What is next? I think when I look at the literature now, there are quite a few observational studies about these citizen responder systems. But I honestly think now we lack a randomized clinical trial to try to answer some of the more critical points. So not just talking about associations like observational studies, but to say something about causality and what is the true benefit of introducing such programs in life saved, and also answer some of the many questions that are still out there with these systems on how to optimize these programs, or which distance can we alert citizen responders. Is it the same system we have to have in rural versus urban areas, etc. And I think, I hope we will see some randomized clinical trials on that. I know they're doing it in Sweden, and we're also doing one in Copenhagen and hopefully have some answers within a year or two.
Well, it's an excellent point. There is a lot more to discover, and I'm sure answers will be forthcoming in the years to come. So, Frederick, thank you very, very much for a very stimulating study, and I wish you the very best in Copenhagen and in Denmark. Thanks so much.
Thank you, you too. Thanks for having me.